Hi, my name's Simon Kernick, the author of my latest thriller, We Can See You, and I'm here at Red Apple Studios listening to Richard Goulding do the audiobook, and very interesting it is too.
Even the most perfect life can shatter in seconds. And Brooke Connor's nightmare began approximately 2 minutes after she walked through her front door. For some reason, she'd had an ominous feeling in her gut on the drive home, which was an unusual occurrence for her. As a child, she'd been plagued by bad dreams, often recurring ones, and had grown up with a deep, irrational sense of doom that could manifest itself in periods of anxiety, especially when things were going well for her.
It's amazing listening to Richard bring the books and characters to life with We Can See You, because he's got an amazing accent. I haven't listened to an audiobook for a short while, actually, and I wasn't sure how he was going to get along with the different characters, the male, the female, and the American accent. But actually, he really brought it to life, and I was kind of, I was taken right back to the book, which is unusual, because I always find that when I finish a book, I tend to forget about it. So it's quite nice to come back, and Richard really brought it alive.
Brooke had learned through long practice to control those bleak, self-destructive thoughts. So she was surprised by the way this one had sneaked up on her. It had been a long day. A round of newspaper and radio interviews in San Francisco to promote her second book, Release Your Inner Warrior, had taken up the morning. These had been followed by 2 90-minute back-to-back private client visits at her office in Santa Cruz, both of which had been utterly exhausting. The first client was a 27-year-old dot-commer who had designed an app that had made him a multimillionaire overnight, but who developed a crippling addiction to internet porn, which made it impossible for him to develop normal relationships with women. Unfortunately, there was no shortage of cases like his, and as far as Brooke was concerned, he was part of a ticking time bomb that was going to have huge ramifications over the next 10 years.
I get my inspiration from my books from all kinds of sources. It may be something I hear in a conversation in a pub. It could be something I read in a newspaper or hear from someone. One of my most popular books, Relentless, came from a nightmare. The first chapter was completely a nightmare which happened to me in my dream, and I literally took the nightmare. I was so scared when I woke up I didn't even kind of want to use it, because I didn't even think about it as an idea, because it was such a terrifying concept. And then I put the first chapter into the book, and obviously wrote the book as a result of that. And I suppose I've never looked back, and I don't normally have nightmares, so it's actually quite sad, because I'm one of these few people that's looking for a really big nightmare for an idea for the next book.
The second client was an equally wealthy married housewife from San Jose who had completely the opposite problem. She couldn't stop developing relationships with the opposite sex, and was having numerous encounters with men she met through various hookup apps, even though she'd been happily married for more than 20 years to a man she claimed to love more than any other. Brooke considered herself a life coach, not a sex therapist. And indeed, both of her books were guides to helping people create better lives for themselves by learning to deal with the stresses of the modern world. But it seemed that a lot of people's life goals revolved around sorting out issues with their love lives. Take sex out of the equation and she'd probably be broke. It was just short of 9 o'clock when she closed the front door behind her, already frowning at the heavy silence inside, and called out to no one in particular that she was home. 7 p.m. was Paige's bedtime. That was when her bedside light went off after the 2 stories she was read every night, usually by Brooke. So she'd be long asleep by now.
There's a kind of audiobook that's close to my heart. When I was 15 years old, which sadly is many, many years ago, Lord of the Rings was done in 26 parts on BBC 2, Radio 2, and it was in half-an-hour slots every Sunday morning. And that was my kind of first introduction to audiobooks, and I absolutely loved it. And I can remember pretty much the date it was on, I can remember how it ended, I can remember the actors' voices even now. So that's very, very close to my heart.
However, there was almost always some noise in the house at this time in the evening. Even if Logan wasn't home, and it didn't sound like he was, Rosa's Honda was in the driveway, so she should be around somewhere. She always kept the TV on in the kitchen, where she liked to sit in the evenings after she'd fixed dinner, trawling through Facebook so she could find out what all her friends and relatives were up to back home. And Rosa, who was what might be best described as a larger-than-life woman, was incapable of being quiet when she moved about. She banged, she crashed, she grunted with exertion, she cursed in Spanish. Logan, Brooke knew, would have preferred someone prettier because that was what he was like. But Paige loved Rosa, and so did Brooke, who found her a warm, comforting, and lively presence within the family. And that was why she picked up on her absence now. I'm home, guys. she called out again, throwing down her purse and kicking off her heels. All the lights were on, and it had only been dark for half an hour, so there had to be people here somewhere. Brooke checked her cell phone. No missed calls, so there was no emergency she should know about. Maybe Rosa had broken her usual habit and fallen asleep or taken an early night.
It's interesting whether I'd ever write a book or a story specifically for audio. Probably I would. I mean, my books are sort of fairly plot and dialogue based, and both of those seem to sort of fit very, very nicely into audio. So yes, I definitely would if I was ever asked to. I would. Yes, 100%.
Brooke hurried up the stairs, forcing a smile as she pushed away the ominous feeling and looked forward to the prospect of seeing her daughter. Paige always looked so angelic when she was asleep, surrounded by her teddy bears, her breathing so soft it was almost inaudible. Sometimes Brooke would kneel down beside her bed and watch her for minutes at a time, relishing their closeness. As quietly as possible, she pushed open Paige's bedroom door and peered inside, knowing she shouldn't wake her daughter, but secretly hoping that she'd stir. The bed was unmade and had been slept in. It was also empty.